At 04:58 a.m. Moscow time, October 27, 2025, a lone Ukrainian drone dove towards its target, a ventilation shaft 100 feet above Kommunarka. 10 feet to the right, and the mission was a total failure. 5 feet to the left, and it would trigger a gas main explosion, leveling a city block. The difference between strategic genius and political catastrophe was a matter of inches, 4 seconds to impact. This single drone was the tip of the spear in the most audacious deception of the war. An attack that began hours earlier, not with 50 drones, but with 200. At least that's what Russian radar saw. The reality was even more brilliant. It was a phantom swarm. Only 50 of those signals were real AN-16 Lyutyi attack drones with a range of over 600 miles. The rest were 150 ghost signals generated by a slick piece of AI tech called GhostEcho, designed to make Russia's air defense operators see things that weren't there. And this ghost swarm had a very specific target, not a power plant or an ammo dump. They were aiming for that secret command bunker in Kommunarka, a nerve center housing 12 high-ranking officials, and the primary logistics server for the entire region. Taking it out would paralyze Russian command for 48 critical hours, triggering a strategic domino effect across the front lines. There is no doubt that this is a difficult task. The bunker was buried deep, shielded by a 250-mile S-400 bubble and backed up by Pantsir S-1 missile systems that fly at Mach 5. Overhead, an A-50 AWACS plane acted like a god in the sky, its powerful sensors able to spot a drone from 200 miles away. The city of Moscow itself was a weapon, a concrete canyon of skyscrapers that blocked signals filled with 12 million civilians where any falling debris could cause an international incident. So how the hell could Ukraine slip 50 real drones through that shield without turning Moscow into a fireworks show at 02:00 a.m. Moscow time? On a quiet stretch of paved road near Sumy, the first phase of the trap sprang shut. Mobile launchers looking like nothing more than commercial trucks popped open. The first Lyutyi drone hissed into the night, followed by another 20 seconds later and another. Across 3 separate launch sites, a perfectly synchronized operation was underway. For every one of the 50 real Lyutyi drones climbing into the air, the GhostEcho system was generating 3 identical phantom radar signals. Instead of building 200 drones, Ukraine built 50 and bought a software update that made them look like 200. It's the kind of ROI that would make a Wall Street banker weep with joy. The real drones carrying their 110-pound payloads immediately dropped to an altitude of just 200 feet, hugging the flat pine-forested terrain. They were deliberately flying into the S-400's blind spot. A system that can track ballistic missiles in space has one critical weakness: its Doppler filter. It's basically a feature designed to ignore all the junk on the ground, swaying trees, cars, wandering cows. To the S-400, a drone flying at 120 miles per hour just 200 feet up looks less like an incoming threat and more like a very ambitious truck driver. But the real genius was in the flight path. The swarm didn't fly in a straight line. It split into 3 distinct phantom groups, one heading for Bryansk, one for Voronezh, and the largest group painting a path towards Tula. This forces the Russian defenders to spread their Pantsir missile systems thin. Each launcher only has 12 missiles. They couldn't concentrate their fire because they had no idea which threat was the real one. But would Russia's billion-dollar defense network see the phantoms or the real killers hiding among them? At 03:30 a.m. Moscow time, as the phantom swarm kept Russia's long-range radar busy, 5 Lyutyi drones detached from the main group. These were the Pathfinders, and their job was to get dangerously close. Flying at just 200 feet, they used Moscow's own skyscrapers as a shield, weaving through the concrete canyons where ground-based radar is effectively blind. They weren't just carrying bombs, they were digital map makers. Each one was equipped with a LIDAR pod painting the bunker's structure with 1,000 laser points a second. But their real ace in the hole was an electronic ear, a SIGINT module. And thanks to that drone Ukraine hacked near Kursk months ago, they knew exactly what frequency to listen to. It was like having the enemy's radio codes. Within minutes, the data stream confirmed the target. The LIDAR found the bullseye, a 3-foot-wide ventilation shaft. The SIGINT painted the guard's 4 Pantsir batteries positioned around the city. The intel was perfect, but flying this close to the hornet's nest is a huge risk. Did they get in and out clean, or did they just trip a silent alarm that's about to wake up 1,000 angry Spetsnaz operators? At 04:10 a.m. Moscow time, 100 miles southwest of the capital, an operator on an S-400 battery near Kaluga finally got a lock. It wasn't a clean signal, it was one of the phantom decoys, but it was enough. Russia's response was immediate and ridiculously expensive. They started firing $100,000 missiles at $500 decoys. It was like using a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. The Pantsir batteries around Moscow joined the party, frantically firing at the ghost signals over Tula. Within minutes, the sky was filled with explosions and falling metal. The element of surprise was officially gone. Worse, Russia now knew its ground radar was being tricked. The call went out. The ace was deployed. A Beriev A-50 AWACS plane lumbered into the sky, its powerful look-down radar and thermal sensors capable of scanning a 200-mile area. Ukraine's low-altitude trick was about to become useless. The easy part was over. Now they had to deal with an eye in the sky. At 04:35 a.m. Moscow time, the game had changed. With the A-50 airborne, the Lyutyi drones couldn't hide behind the Earth's curvature anymore. So Ukraine pulled its own ace from the sleeve. They activated Phantom Shift. It was an electronic magic trick. The GhostEcho system changed the very frequency the Phantoms were broadcasting on. For 45 critical seconds, the S-400 ground radar went completely blind. It's like trying to tune into your favorite radio station, but someone has secretly moved it on the dial. All you get is static. While the ground radar was deaf and dumb, the real Lyutyi drones executed a classic beam maneuver, turning to fly perpendicular to the S-400's last known position. This shrinks their already tiny radar signature to almost nothing. It's the electronic equivalent of turning sideways to slip through a narrow doorway. But that still left the A-50's thermal cameras. The solution: use the enemy's own city against them. The drones dove deeper into the urban canyons, using the heat rising from Moscow's skyscrapers to mask their own thermal signature. But you can't fool a god in the sky forever. The A-50's powerful computers started filtering out the background heat. Through a gap in the buildings, its thermal camera caught a flicker of heat that didn't belong. Then another. It had found them. 5 real Lyutyi drones, now painted with a target lock. At 04:40 a.m. Moscow time, on the ground, 10 Pantsir S-1 missiles launched in a furious volley, accelerating to Mach 5 as they tore through the sky towards the 5 exposed drones. This was no longer a chess match. It was a high-speed mugging. The Lyutyi drones scattered, executing pre-programmed evasive maneuvers that would snap a human pilot's neck. They dove into Moscow's narrow alleyways using concrete and steel as shields. But you can't outrun a missile that's 5 times faster than you are. So they didn't try. Instead, each drone released a towed decoy, an ALE-50. It's essentially a flying microwave oven, a tiny pod designed to scream a thermal signature that's hotter and more attractive to an incoming missile than the drone itself. The Pantsir missiles, hardwired to seek the biggest heat source, fell for the trick. They swerved violently and detonated on the decoys, lighting up the sky 500 feet away from their intended targets. But survival had a price. Shrapnel from one of the blasts shredded a Lyutyi's camera lens, blinding its operator. And in that same instant, the Russians, realizing their missiles had been fooled, unleashed an electronic hailstorm. Powerful jamming signals blanketed the area. The video feeds from 2 more drones dissolved into static. The operators were now flying 3 of their 5 lead assassins half-blind deep inside the most heavily defended city on the planet. The physical threat was gone, but an invisible electronic wall had just slammed down in front of them. At 04:50 a.m. Moscow time, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight, and you don't fly quietly into an electronic hurricane. The lead drones fought back. Each dropped a small ECM pod that blossomed with raw, disruptive energy. It was the electronic equivalent of setting off an air horn in a library. For 20 precious seconds, the A-50's radar screens were flooded with so much noise that locking onto a target was impossible. But the Russians unleashed their final defense, a brutal close-range jamming assault. The video feeds from the drones dissolved into static. The operators were blind. This wasn't a failure, it was part of the plan. For the final 10 seconds of its life, the drone no longer needed a human operator. Its onboard AI switched to terminal autonomous mode. Stored in its memory was a high-resolution image of the target, the ventilation shaft. The drone's camera was now a digital eye, its processor a brain, its only mission to match the image in its memory to the reality in front of it and fly directly into the bullseye. Think of it like the facial recognition on your phone, but instead of unlocking your screen, it's locking onto a target for annihilation. But genius doesn't make you bulletproof. As the drones began their AI-guided dives, a flash of light erupted from a rooftop. A Spetsnaz operator, ignoring the electronic chaos, had sighted a drone visually and fired a shoulder-launched Igla-S missile. The heat seeker was true. One of the 4 lead drones simply vanished in a ball of fire. The electronic shield was broken and the path to the bunker was clear, but the price was 1 drone down. Now only 4 remained, flying their final irreversible attack run entirely on their own. At 04:57 a.m. Moscow time, the 4 remaining drones screamed towards the ground, flying on pure, unjammable instinct. On the screens of the last-ditch Pantsir batteries, this was the moment of absolute chaos. For the last hour, their systems had been trying to solve an impossible equation with 200 variables. Now, 4 very real targets were diving in, but the Phantom Swarm wasn't finished. This was the trap's final brilliant move. The decoy signals over Kaluga, the ones the Russians had been chasing all night, suddenly pulsed with overwhelming energy. They went from looking like a threat to looking like the main threat, a massive final wave. The Pantsir operators, sweating under insane pressure, had seconds to make a choice. Do they engage the 4 silent drones diving in front of them or the 50 screaming phantoms on the horizon? It was a quarterback trying to find his one open receiver while 100 kids are throwing snowballs at his helmet. They made the only choice they could, the wrong one. They fired their last 8 missiles at the biggest, loudest threat on their screens, the Ghost Swarm. The gamble had paid off. The bait was taken. For the 90 seconds it would take them to reload, they were nothing more than spectators. The Russian air defense net didn't just bend, it shattered. The bunker was naked, and 4 165-pound messengers were about to knock on its door. At 04:58 a.m. Moscow time, from the 4 diving drones, 4 165-pound warheads detached and began their unpowered final glide. Their small V-tails deployed, turning them into miniature guided bombs, locking onto the GPS coordinates 55.58 to Gien 37.52 DGE with a precision of less than 1 foot. Seconds later, they struck. The hardened penetrator heads didn't explode on the surface. They slammed through 10 feet of reinforced concrete like a fist through drywall, coming to rest deep inside the bunker's structure, just feet from the main command server room. The bunker rang like a dinner bell, signaling to Moscow's elite that their fortress wasn't so untouchable. The fuses on the warheads had a precise 0.8-second delay. Why? Because the goal wasn't to blow a hole in the bunker, it was to cook everything inside it. That delay allowed the warheads to penetrate deep before detonating, trapping the blast wave. It's the difference between opening your oven door and setting off a grenade inside it. One makes a lot of noise, the other turns your dinner into charcoal. When the 165 pounds of high explosive finally went off, the shockwave had nowhere to go. The 5,000 psi pressure front hit the concrete walls and bounced back, amplifying its own destructive power. It didn't just break things, it shattered them. Concrete support columns snapped like popsicle sticks. The ceiling collapsed, swallowing the server racks whole, turning a high-tech command center into a chaotic concrete tomb. There was no fire, but the secondary effect was just as devastating. The shockwave's sheer force shattered the electronics, turning server racks into scrap metal. The server lights blinked out. The network went silent. It was like pulling the plug on a regional data center, leaving Russia's logistics in the dark, a catastrophic, instantaneous data death. The explosion wasn't big, but it was smart enough to make Putin call for an IT guy instead of a firefighter. The physical destruction was precise, but the chaos was total. Spetsnaz operators swarmed the area, establishing a perimeter of fear, while Mayor Sobyanin desperately tweeted that the explosions were just fireworks. But a cheap commercial drone hovering from a mile away told the real story, a scene of panic that looked less like a military operation and more like a Black Friday sale gone horribly wrong. The immediate losses were catastrophic. OSINT sources later confirmed 12 high-ranking Russian officials, including 2 Spetsnaz generals, were taken off the board. The servers were a total loss, wiping out an estimated 70% of the logistical data for the entire Moscow military district. And a few hours later, the final confirmation came from an eye in the sky. Russia couldn't jam a Starshield satellite past overhead its 14 frames of imagery showing a crater whose diameter perfectly matched the blast profile of a 165-pound warhead. The Russians could lie to their people, but they couldn't lie to physics. This is where a single brilliant tactical strike becomes a strategic masterpiece. That bunker wasn't just a building, it was Putin's auxiliary brain for the region, a backup server for the entire war effort. And when it went offline, the whole corporate structure of the Russian army began to crash. First command and control was decapitated. Orders to the front lines stopped. It was a repeat of the chaos seen in Kursk, where a similar command failure led to a 24-hour paralysis. Next, the artillery went blind. Thousands of Russian guns across the Donbas are just dumb terminals. They need targeting data from a central network. With that network shattered, they fell silent, allowing Ukrainian forces to advance nearly 10 miles in the critical 48 hours that followed. Then logistics froze. Convoys of trucks stalled on the highways waiting for orders that would never arrive. It was the Kerch Bridge disaster all over again, but this time the bottleneck wasn't physical, it was digital. The psychological impact was even greater. The attack spread paranoia through the Russian high command like a virus. It showed that no one, not even in Moscow, was safe. This vulnerability came at the worst possible time as a newly elected Trump 2.0 administration was pressuring NATO allies to step up, leading to a fresh $2.3 billion in drone aid for Ukraine. The strike didn't just destroy a bunker, it helped sign the check for thousands more drones just like it. And so with 200 Phantom drones and a handful of real ones, Ukraine turned Moscow's impenetrable fortress into the punchline of Putin's worst joke. The lesson is brutal and clear. Don't brag about your billion-dollar S-400 when your enemy has the lethal combination of Lyutyi drones, Starlink, and a bigger brain. In modern warfare, the winner isn't the guy with the most expensive hardware. It's the one who uses it with the most savage and brilliant ingenuity. So I'll leave you with this. If you were the Ukrainian commander, where would you set the next Phantom trap, St. Petersburg or the naval base at Vladivostok? Let me know your evil plans in the comments below and subscribe for more deep dives.